Hello there, everybody. Darshan over here. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and start once again. I'm gonna reboot the C++ courses, and I'm gonna go through everything that we can learn in C++. So here's a bit of information about me. If you didn't know, my name is Darshan Govender, and I studied at the University of KwaZulu Natal. I studied a 4 year degree, 4 year degree being my honors degree, and from there I've been going in and out, searching for jobs, working at places, coming back, learning a lot about technology. So for this course, we're going to go through C++. plus plus. Now, from what I know, is that C++ plus plus is a field that's very heavy on development. When I say that, it's very complicated. There's a lot of different there's a lot of different broadways or avenues you can take in C++. You can do DevOps, you can do debugging, you can do so many different things. And I think this course is going to be really good because they say that a C++ programmer is a salary programmer, which means that a lot of people who do C++ programming tend to earn high salaries. So if you're excited for this course, if would like to participate, if you would like to learn about C++, please follow me and we'll continue straight on to the video. Thanks so much for watching this part of the video so far. Thank you. Right. So let's get straight into it. So in this course, we're going to go through control flow and the following topics will be covered. We have the if statement, relational operators, multiple alternatives, nested branches, Boolean operations, the while loop, the for loop, the do loop, and nested loops. Right. So to start off with, we'll talk about the if statement. So I'm not going to go through data types because that's been explained in a previous C++ video. For this video, we're going to go further ahead and try to grasp more advanced topics. So that's why we're starting off with control flow. Right. So you can see here that I've declared a string called time of day and I've set it to morning. And I've said if time of day is equal to morning, then I want the console to print out good morning, fellow viewers. So there's some things you should notice here. Number one is to start an if statement, you have to put in the keyword if, and then simply put in your condition. So my condition is time of day is equivalent to morning, and then you close it with a block of braces. So this sign over here is the equivalence operator. I'll explain more about relational operators after this. So let's see if this works. Right, so you can see it successfully prints out good morning, fellow viewers. Right. Okay, so the next thing we want to discuss is relational operators. So there are actually six relational operators here. We have a greater than, which is the forward facing arrow. We have a greater than or equal. We have a less than. We have a less than or equal, the equivalents or the equals, and we have a not equal. So we're going to try out we're not going to try out all of these, but we're going to try out some of them in this video that we're going through. Right. So the first scenario that we have here for multiple alternatives, which is the next topic that we're going to cover, is a scenario where we ask the user to enter length and breadth, and we get the area from the user's inputs. So this is basically an if and else statement. So before we saw what an if statement does, but what if we want to have more conditions to check? In that case, we have an if else statement. So in the statement, we're saying area mod 3 is equal to 0. What does mod mean? Mod means we divide by 3 and we take into account the remainder that's gained from the modular operation. So in this case, I'm saying if the modular operation yields a remainder of 0, then we're going to say that the number that the area that the user has inputted is divisible by 3. Otherwise, if it's greater than 0, then that means that it's not divisible by 3. So let's actually test this out and see how it works. One thing I would just like to explain quickly is that we have a C in here. So if I haven't explained this, I'll explain it again. Cin is basically a way to get user input from the console. So I put in the length and breadth. Now I've put two arguments here, or two inputs here, and I'll explain why I've put in two once I've run this. Okay, so as you can see, it's asking you to enter a length. What it should actually say is enter your length and breadth. Okay, so let's run it. Right. So the first input that we had was the length. So let's say that the length is 3, and in order to enter in the second input, we put a space, and we could say, for instance, maybe 9, right? So 27 should be the area. So if we enter, it says here 27 is divisible by 3, right? So that's a way in which you can put in two arguments into cin. What if we wanted to, for instance, not make it divisible by 3? So for instance, we say 2 times 5, which is obviously 10, and it'll say 10 is not divisible by 3, right? So that's that scenario. The next scenario that we're going to go through is scenario 2. Okay, so in this scenario, we have a variable, an integer variable that contains 7, which is basically the number of damaged parts in a vehicle. So this is actually what is meant by an if-else statement that has multiple if and else options. So we have damaged parts is greater than equal to 10. We have damaged parts is greater than equal to 5, equal to 1. And we have all these different statements. We're saying if it's greater than equal to 10, your vehicle is written off. If it's greater than equal to 5, your vehicle will take 1 month to repair, otherwise 1 week, and otherwise the vehicle needs no repairs whatsoever. So I've set this to 7. Let's try to run this and see what happens. Right. So as you can see, it prints out your vehicle it will take 1 month to repair. Right. So if I had to change this to say 2, then it should display this message over here. Your vehicle will take 1 week to repair. So if I rebuild that, it says there your vehicle will take 1 week to repair. Right. So that's basically if else and else statements. Of course, else is basically to say if there's any other condition that hasn't been satisfied, then if all the other conditions are met, then do the final condition, which is your vehicle does not need repairs. I just want to show you this. So let's say if I set this to 0 and I run it, it now says your vehicle does not need repairs, right? So another thing that we can do is called a switch statement. How does a switch statement work? Well, it's pretty similar to an if-else statement, except a switch statement can be used to meet simple conditions such as this. Say, for instance, we create int ranking. So we're saying that so to start it off a switch statement, simply use the keyword switch, put in your variable within the brackets. So I put in ranking, and then do a case for each instance of that variable. So in this case, the variable is if it's set to 1, we're going to say that the person has achieved a gold medal. If it's set to 2, they win a silver medal. If it's set to 3, it's a bronze medal. Otherwise, the default case, or in this case, we can say that in else is sort of like in default case. So the default case would be keep training, you will get there. So I'm going to say int ranking is equal to 2, right? And I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to run this. Right, it says silver medal. So in an instance of it being, say, if your rank is 10, in a 100-meter race, your rank is 10, right? And we hit run, it will show the default case, keep training, you will get there. Okay, so that's how a switch statement works in C++. Next, we're going to talk about nested branches. How do nested branches work? Well, basically, we take if and else statements and we nest them together. So in this instance, we're saying we're setting country equal to ZAR. ZAR is the South African the South African code, and the province we've set it equal to Western Cape. And we're saying here that the shipping charge is 70 rand within South Africa. So if the country is ZA, if the country is ZAR, and the province is equal to Western Cape, then set the shipping charge to 140 Rand. The reason why we're setting it to 140 Rand is because Cape Town is more expensive. Otherwise, if it's not ZAR and it's some other country, we set it to 280 Rand. That's for foreign shipments. So now if we run this code, it should print out 140 Rand. Or it should be set to 140 Rand, right? I want to show this. So I'm going to say down here, cout the shipping charge is R. We're going to put in shipping charge here. Right. Don't forget to end line. Okay, cool. So the shipping charge is 140 Rand. Now, if we set this to some other country or some other province, let's say we do KwaZulu Natal, KwaZulu Natal, and we save it and we enter this, you can see that your shipping charge is now 70 Rand. Okay. And in the case of the other scenario where it's not a country like that, let's say it's the USA, and we can say, I'm not sure about the states in the USA, but I'm going to say California. And we run it. It should say the shipping charge is 280 Rand. Okay. So that's a basic demonstration of how to use nested branches. Right. So now I want to discuss Boolean operators. What are Boolean operators? Operators that basically have a true or false value. So over here, we have an example layout of how the Boolean structure works. This ampersand symbol here, this double ampersand symbol is basically another way of saying and. And then we have two pipe symbols here, which means or. And then we have an exclamation mark next to a variable, which means not. So that's basically changes or negates the value. So if A is true and B is true, then we're saying A and B is true. Otherwise, for any other scenario where A might be false or B might be false, it will be set to false. If it's A or B, wherever it's true for A or true for B, it will be true. Otherwise, if they're both false, it's false. And because we have not A, if A is true and we put not A, that will be negated to false. If it's false, it will be negated to true. So let's see how this works in a scenario. In this process, I've said that I have set two variables and two integer variables, x and y. I've set x equals to 1 and y equals to 2. So if you know how mapping works or how a graph is visualized, we have our y-axis, we have our x-axis, and region 1 or quadrant 1 will be on the top right, and then we go anti-clockwise, and each quadrant is defined thereof. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're saying here if x is greater than 0 and y is equal to 0, so both statements must be true, then the point is within the first quadrant. If x is greater than 0 or y is greater than 0, then the point is either within the second or the fourth quadrant. So that means that one of these need to be true. And then finally, else if x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 0, then it's a neutral point, meaning it's in the center over here. Otherwise, it's within the third quadrant. So One thing I want to mention is that the way in which if and else statements works is that if the first condition is not met, then we go into the second condition. So there's a way to logically think about this. So if this first statement here, which says x is greater than 0 and y is equal to 0, I mean x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, is not met, then we know for a fact that the point can't be a positive x and it can't be a positive y. So that's why we put in this statement over here, because this statement, one might say, well, what if x is true, x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, then wouldn't this statement also execute with this statement at the top? Wouldn't both these statements execute? Well, no, it doesn't work like that. How it works is that it goes in order from top to bottom. So if this statement is not met, then obviously in this statement here, we're only checking to see if one of them is true. So that's something logically that you can keep in mind whenever you program if and else statements. So let's actually test this out and see how it works. We can see that the point is within the first quadrant. And I want to show you what happens if we set this to say -2, right? It will say point within second and fourth quadrants. It should say second or fourth quadrants. In fact, it shouldn't say and. Second or fourth quadrants, right? If it's both zero, it's a neutral point. And if it's okay, let's just test that out quickly. It's always good to test your code. Always remember that you'll never get it 100% unless you test the code itself. Neutral point. Okay, and the final scenario where it's negative, right? We can see that point within third quadrant. Okay, so that's how we can use Boolean expressions, Boolean conditions to be able to check for true or false values. Right. So the final three topics that we want to discuss is the while loop, the for loop, and the do loop, or otherwise known as the do while loop. So how does a while loop work exactly? We declare int x is equal to 5 here, and we're saying the condition is if x is greater than 0. So what this loop does is that it runs through these statements again and again until the condition is no longer met. So the condition is saying is x is greater than 0. So x is currently equal to 5, and we're saying C out pow x comma 2 end line. So pow is basically to the power of, and we're saying x to the power of 2, so that's x squared. So it will first start with 5 squared, and then it will go on to this statement over here, which decrements x by 1. So it will go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then once it hits 0, the condition is no longer met, and it will not print out um, anything further on. So let's see how this works. Right, so we have 25, 69, 4, and 1. The rest of these values you can ignore. They're part of the for loop and so on. So that has worked that way. Right, so that's a while loop. Now, there's an instance where you might need to keep track of the index of, you might need to keep track of an index. In this case, it could be arrays that you're working with, or it could be something more. You could be working with a some sort of structure that keeps all the different variables. But we'll get into that later on. But for now, let's look at the for loop. So the for loop statement, you have to declare a for loop by using the keyword for. We specify the initialization condition. We specify the condition here, and then we specify the change in expression. So we have the initialization, the condition, and the change in expression. So you're saying if int is equal to 5, I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. We'll say that I is greater than 0 here, just to replicate what it would be like if we did this whole process just like we did it in a for loop. Then we're saying C R power I to the power of 2 end line. So let's see how this works. Right, so the first instance we had the while loop 25 to 1, and then we have our for loop 25 to 1 as well. And that works perfectly. Right, so the final loop I want to discuss is called the do while loop. So this is a different scenario that we're taking into account. We're saying int, we're declaring a variable called z as an integer. We're saying do while. So to do a do while loop, you put in the keyword do, you open your block and you put your while keyword, then you put your condition, and don't forget to end with a semicolon. So z is less than equal to 0. So what we're saying is keep entering a number until you get a positive number. So let's see how that works. Right? So let's say we enter a negative number. It'll say, please enter a positive number. We can keep entering negative numbers, but until we enter a positive number, it's not going to stop the loop. So let's say we enter 5 as a positive number. We press enter, and you can see the program has finished and it's completely executed. Right? Guys, so that's the three types of loops that you can deal with in C++. You have the while loop, the for loop, and the do while loop. Right. Okay, everybody. So that brings us to the end of this module, or this specific section on control flow. We've done quite a bit. If you feel like you don't understand something, go back in the video, recap, try to memorize, try to first try to understand. That's the most important thing, is understanding what's on screen. So that's why I've decided to. I haven't exactly programmed with you the whole way. I've sort of just taken. I've already done the programming and I'll put it on the screen and I've explained it to you. So that's to give you an understanding of exactly what's going on. Going forward, I don't know if I'll use this method, but we'll see how things go. But thanks so much for watching this video. If you would like more content like this, if you would like to learn more from about C++, please leave a like, please subscribe, and follow my channel, subscribe to my channel. Share, comment, let me know if this is working for you, if this is teaching you a lot. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing you. I look forward to the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Josh and out.